On that note, let's bring in the New South Wales Premier Chris Minns, who's spruiking his budget today. Premier, good to see you. So just on yesterday, first of all, we've got a bit to get to today, but not much in the way of handouts like your federal and Queensland counterparts. But when Michelle Bullock yesterday expressed alarm over big spending budgets, that they may in fact be inflationary, do you feel justified that you've done your bit?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest pressure on households and businesses in New South Wales is interest rates and inflation, and we've made it clear we don't want to add to the burden of the Reserve Bank when they make their decision about interest rates. So we've taken what we think is a sensible decision about budget restraint for this budget. The best thing we can do is keep downward pressure on interest rates and not add to inflation in the economy, and that's the budget we brought down yesterday.
So is that, with that said, is that cheap politics by your Labor colleagues?
Well, I mean, look, I can only speak for New South Wales. We've got an enormous amount of debt in the state. We were handed that from the previous government. We're on the way to $180 billion worth of gross debt in the state. The budget, second to last from the previous government, was the largest deficit in the state's history. So we have to be prudent with public money. It's not my money, it's the taxpayers of this state. What we have invested in is in housing. That's our big spending item. And the reason for that, Peter, is that we didn't think it was a nice to have. It's a must have when you live in Sydney, which is recognised as the second most expensive city in the world.
Yeah, so, I mean, to date, Premier, as you know, all housing plans and all housing targets have been missed. So what's going to make your policy any different? Why do you think yours will be successful when others haven't been?
Look, a few things. Firstly, we've completely rezoned Sydney's density levels, particularly around public transport station. It's been the largest rezoning in the shortest period of time in the state's history. We've also removed a lot of the bureaucracy and the roadblocks when it comes to new builds in the state. The planning department was too cumbersome, but the major initiative in the last 24 hours is 30,000 homes for New South Wales. Many of them will be for the private sector, 21,000 on government-owned sites for the private housing market, but also a major social housing build. 50% of those houses will go to victims, survivors of domestic violence.
Premier, Matt Keane with a parting shot on his way out the door yesterday, calling this the worst budget in New South Wales history. How do you feel about his comments?
Oh, look, you know, a bit of politics on the way out the door, but I just say that the previous government, and Matt was the treasurer of that government, brought down the largest debt and the largest deficit in the state's history. In fact, we inherited from one government the largest debt ever handed from one government to another in New South Wales' entire history. So,
right, much of that was COVID, though, right?
He's the best person to be throwing bricks. Well, that's true, but he also spent $20 billion in 9 months, and that wasn't during COVID. So, look, I'm not sure he's in the best place, in a sound position to be throwing bombs at the other side of politics, but he's leaving, so I wish him all the best. OK. Peter Dutton to announce his nuclear energy plans this morning, Premier, specifically where they'll go. It has been speculated that New South Wales would have one in the Hunter Valley. Would you approve or support that? Look, I wouldn't. We've got a prohibition on nuclear-generated power in New South Wales, and we're not going to remove that in the state. And I don't know whether the opposition's planning on doing it if they were to win government either. I think it's the same situation in Queensland. Look, the bottom line here is that nuclear power costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time. And we don't really have a moment to spare when it comes to renewing our energy grid and thinking about new sources of electricity generation. So I think it might be just a bit of a thought bubble from the federal opposition. Unless we can see how and where the money will come from, I'd be a bit sceptical of it.
If he does win at the election, though, based on this policy, wouldn't that prove strong community support, though, and perhaps he'd have a mandate for it? Would that change your mind?
Look, there's a few hypotheticals in there. He's a long way from winning the election and getting a mandate for that.
If he does, though.
Look, we've run on a mandate as well. But Pete, we've run on a mandate too. We're not supporting nuclear power. We're putting an enormous amount of resources in our renewable energy revolution in the state. We've made a decision, a difficult decision, about a Rarring power station, which is coal-fired, specifically so that we can manage the bump from coal to renewable energy in the state. All of our plans, all of our resources billions of dollars of private capital have all gone on this roadmap. To just rip that up because Peter Dutton is insisting on nuclear energy, I mean, how can that economically make sense for the state when what we need right now is certainty?
Okay, help me understand here. Could a Commonwealth pitch, could that override a state ban on nuclear?
It's a really good question. I have to be honest, I don't know the answer. I mean, I presume not. I think our state laws are pretty clear when it comes to planning, but whether there's some overriding constitutional question that he can pursue, I think that's a matter for him. I mean, he's the one who's proposing the policy, but look, our ban stays in place. We're not repealing it. I'd be surprised if the New South Wales Liberal and National Party want to repeal it as well.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. New South Wales Premier Chris Minns, appreciate your time as always. We'll chat to you soon.